Welcome to today's ESI podcast, our series, Practical HR Tips for Managers. And today, in the first part of our series, we're talking with special guest Melina Bassi. Melina is an HR business partner at EESI. She has 20 plus years of PEO experience working with industries such as retail, healthcare, and construction. Welcome, Melina. Thank you for being our guest today.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Well, we're talking about identifying risk. What are three of the most important HR tips that managers should have regarding the ability to identify risk areas for a company?
To be able to identify risk, they need to have legal awareness. Managers are the front line of your workforce, and those who are unfamiliar with the employment law often have incorrect assumptions about employer and employee rights in the workplace.
For example,
there's risk associated in managing, and it begins at the very beginning when you're recruiting to fill that position that now you have to fill. You need to make sure that your ad is written properly with the essential duties of the job. You need to make sure you're asking legally permitted questions during your interviews. Hire without bias, promote fairly, pay men and women equally, and make sure your separations are handled consistently and fairly. This is the employee's life cycle, and there is so many risks associated in each parts of that cycle.
Can you give us an example of a company that has had an issue with one or several parts of this life cycle?
Absolutely. This year, Hertz rental car place, settled to pay $45,000 in a disability discrimination. There was a candidate that they recruited for a sales position online. The manager expressed concerns about the candidate's mobility because he was using a cane. The candidates that they decided to hire had far less experience, and one never sold a car. So with this story here, you should never assume that someone can't do the job. Instead, you should always ask, can you perform the essential duties of a job with or without reasonable accommodations?
Okay, so when you say legal awareness, in this case with Hertz Rental, where they had to pay $45,000 in disability discrimination, had the manager been knowledgeable, had legal awareness about some of the issues, they would have handled that case differently and thus saved the company a very significant fine. What is another way that you can mitigate risk?
The other thing they would need to do is lead by example. Know what's in their HR toolbox. Know when to contact HR, know when to seek legal counsel, and when to end that employment relationship. Besides that, they need to know what their company policies are, what are the work rules, and if they don't have anything in place, find out what they've done in the past and stay consistent with that. In addition, take complaints seriously, act quickly when someone complains, and we all have a responsibility as managers and as employers. We need to create an environment where your employees know that you value a safe and harassment-free workplace.
Thank you, Melina. That was helpful. Can you give us an example of what not to do?
We have an employee who disclosed to a coworker that they enjoyed working for their employer, but they were considering to look for another job. The employee was always scheduled to close along with other employees and their manager loved coming out at the end of the shift, undressed down to their underwears, and like the movie Risky Business, where they come out sliding out and they do a little song and dance around the showroom.
So this manager would take off his clothes and come out at night to close down the store.
Yeah, and do a little song and dance, very similar to the movie Risky Business. Of course, that made, the working condition very uncomfortable for this one employee, and they never reported it to anyone because everyone around them seemed like it was okay, that this behavior was okay for this manager to do this little song and dance at the end of the shift.
And so what happened there?
Well, the coworker actually, the employee that the coworker expressed this to, the coworker came forward and informed the HR department. At that time, the HR department did their due diligence, immediately started investigating, looking into the matter. Come to find out, the intent for the manager was thought it was harmless, actually. He thought it was all innocent. He thought it was funny. We had a long day. I thought it would be funny. I did it before and no one said anything, so everybody laughed. I thought it was acceptable behavior. But the impact by that behavior is he could have potentially lost a really good employee and possibly had a potential claim that could have impacted the employer.
For those of you who have seen Risky Business, you can imagine what this was like at this company. Do you know if the employee was this a male-female issue or a male-male issue, or?
Actually, it was a male-male.
Okay.
So the male has an issue with it, and he thought it was very inappropriate behavior for a leader of an organization to behave that way. But
So,
he also didn't feel confident to go and tell anyone about it because he didn't want to be the one that was not part of the team. You know, everyone else thought it was funny, so he didn't want to be the one that was going to be telling on the manager while everyone was enjoying the show.
so having legal awareness of what the issues are is important, and also this example that managers should lead by example is another way to mitigate risk at your company. Is there anything else that you think would be helpful for company owners to understand about ways they can mitigate potential suits and issues, compliance issues?
Yes, definitely. They need to be familiar with their city, federal, state employment laws. They need to also be familiar what is exactly employment at will and how to properly use probationary period. We see quite a bit where, where employers or managers who don't have conversations or they don't feel comfortable or they don't want to be the bad guy and have a conversation with an employee at the very beginning of the stage of their employment, and they feel that they can utilize, this is an at-will state, and I can dismiss them at any time for any reason. I don't have to give that employee a reason. Or they'll say, you know what, they're under their probationary period, so we're just going to go ahead and terminate employment because we don't like how they're performing, or we just don't think they're going to be a good fit. So they kind of use those two free passes, so they think, to terminate someone's employment. However, good rule of thumb is to make sure that you do your job and you do document and you do have these conversations, because if you're not going to give a reason to why you're ending that employment with that employee, they're going to find one. And they may find one and say it's something that has been you violated or discriminated against them because of their race or because of their religion.
You want to make sure they understand why you're terminating the employment, not that they have to guess at it, because they might end up guessing more than likely that it's some kind of discrimination or some kind of other issue. So,
correct.
Even though it's an employment at will state like Texas is, and even though there are probationary periods, what you're saying is that those things will not cover you alone. You need to document issues. Is that correct?
Correct. Absolutely. You always need to follow what you've done in the past as a practice. You need to follow your company manual, and definitely be fair, be consistent. Again, you have to be consistent and fair with everybody. You can't do one for someone and then do differently for another person.
Melina, what if you hire someone and you have a probationary period of 3 or 6 months and they're just not really working in your company culture that well? Can you let that person go at that point?
No, actually, I would want to dig a little bit more deeper. Exactly why are they not fitting in your organization? If a client would contact me or a manager would contact me and say, hey, Melina, this person's just not fitting in at all. They don't get my jokes. They're just not getting along. They don't say good morning. No one enjoys working around them. What I would know is there has to be more. What else is there? Yeah, you can probably have a conversation with the individual and say, hey, it seems that, every morning you're not saying good morning. Is everything okay? There's some people who just don't like saying good morning. So I would really want to dig more into that surface, because sometimes they're just getting acclimated and they're getting comfortable in their situation and they're trying to still getting familiar with the company's culture. So you couldn't immediately just say they can't fit in. I would say, well, let's try to work with this individual. Let's find ways to build more of a team environment and not immediately go into let's terminate them because they just don't seem to fit.
You mentioned, I Having legal awareness of issues, of course, very important, and understanding that managers have to lead by example. Is there anything else that you think would be important to help mitigate against potential problems at a company as far as managers are concerned?
Yes, actually, I think it's very important for any manager or employer to conduct their own climate surveys and do exit interviews. By doing these surveys and exit interviews, you will find things that will bring awareness to you to an issue that maybe you were not aware of.
Mm-hmm.
For example, I conducted an exit interview for a client, and the employee reported that the real reason that they were quitting was because there was rumors about her and her male supervisor having a relationship. She didn't know about these rumors that were being spread until the manager of her department decided to hold a company meeting within that department and bring everyone in a conference room, sit down, and address these rumors. And in the meeting, the manager said, "I don't know who's spreading these rumors about me and Sue, but they aren't true. We are not sleeping together." That was so embarrassing for that individual, Sue, who was sitting in that room surrounded by her peers while the manager was addressing the group. For one, she wasn't aware of this. Two, everyone's looking at her, and all her peers are, now she's finding out her peers are making these rumors. It was just a very uncomfortable situation for her, and she left the room crying, very upset.
So it's good to make sure that you have a way of knowing what's going on in the department to make that a priority.
Absolutely. We have a saying in HR, where there's smoke, there's fire. So if there's some smoke, you might want to go check it because you may need to put it out before it goes into a full blaze.
What is constructive discharge?
Constructive discharge, it's pretty common where sometimes managers don't even know they're doing it, and sometimes they do, is where they make it so unbearable where an employee can't even work, that no reasonable person would be expected to stay. And they make it so horrible that they quit. They had no other choice. They had to leave because that manager was just rude to them every day, was maybe every time that employee was trying to make a suggestion, the manager would ignore that individual in a group meeting. Maybe it's a person that uses vulgar language constantly and just make it so where they can't handle it and be in that environment anymore that they have to quit.
What are the potential problems if they do something like that?
Whatever the reasons may be, if they find a reason, you could have potential claims. You treated them differently because of something, because of their age, because of their religion, because of their sexual orientation, because of their gender. So you want to be fair. You want to treat everyone equally as a leader and not make an work environment so horrible that someone can't work there.
You've talked about how important it is for managers to be legally aware of cases and how, as a small business owner, how can I help my managers be legally aware of issues so that we don't have unnecessary lawsuits or fines or legal issues?
I think it's very important as employers when you place a manager there to be responsible to run your workforce that you provide the tools. You give them the appropriate training, you provide guidance, and you let them know, hey, we partner with eEmployer Solutions. Please use Melina, your HR business partner, whenever you need some help troubleshooting or when you're in doubt of some sort of a situation. If you're unsure about this termination, work together with your partner. They're an extension of your department, and that's what they're there for. In addition to that, be supportive. If the more training your managers can get, if it's via live in person, going to a seminar, or online through a learning management system, or even attending one of those lunch and learns where you log into a webinar and attend trainings there, the more training your managers get, the better off you are for your organization.
You mentioned the HR Toolbox earlier in our conversation. What is the HR Toolbox?
It's available. HR business partners here at ESI works with their clients and their managers. We can help you curate that HR Toolbox, and we let you know to contact us. We are here for you. Please call us. You can communicate via online, on phone, or in person. In addition to that, We figure out what are your company policies. If you do not have one, we will work with you. We need to figure out what you've done in the past. We have a conversation. We sit down and we build this manual that you're going to use to reference, to know what are the call-in procedures, what are the holidays, do they have to work the day before or the day after to get holiday pay. There's some important information in this manual that they need to have access to. When we're putting the manual together for the employer, we will put all those important employment laws that you're subject to as an employer because of your group size. So if you are 50 or more employees, we're going to have the FMLA policy in that manual and how it works. If you are over 15 employees, ADA, American Disability Act policy, will be in your manual. So we provide those important laws that are fit for your group based on the size will be in that manual for your employees and managers to reference. There's also going to be forms. I think it's very important to know what forms are needed as a manager, and that would be, okay, do I need to have my termination form? I need to have a checklist. In addition to that, there is performance improvement plan.
So the toolbox has a policy manual in detail based on the size of your company, what specific laws you need to be complying with. It also has forms that are useful for almost any situation regarding your employees. How about training?
You should always be training.
Okay.
If it's part of your learning management system and it's a process, a program that's available for you, then yes, it would be in your toolbox because it's going to be more of a standard operation procedures. This is what I need to do. Oh, how do I handle the situation? Oh, that's right. There is a training on our LMS, learning management system, that talked about having difficult conversations with employees. Let me go back to that and reference that. How to counsel an employee. Let me go back and refresh. It will be as a useful tool in there as well, but you got to know where those trainings are.
Melina, we thank you for your time covering different ways that companies can mitigate against risk in the workplace. You mentioned having legal awareness, making sure that the managers understand the legal risks for companies of their size, and that managers need to lead by example. And you also mentioned that you need to understand what your workforce is thinking. And some of the ways that a company can do that, you've also mentioned that they need to have an HR toolbox, which is simply a very detailed policy manual, the forms that are necessary to go along with that manual, and another part of that would be training, which is how your managers can become aware of the different types of legal issues they need to be familiar with. And that training, as you mentioned earlier, can be done in person or it can be done online. Well, Melina, thank you for your time. I appreciate your insights, and we look forward to talking with you again soon.
Okay, thank you.
Our special guest today has been Melina Bassi, an HR business partner at EESI. And our subject in this first of a series on practical HR tips for managers, how to identify risks. If you are a small business owner, it is critical that your managers know and understand the laws, the risks, and the established company procedures for dealing with employee issues. Working with an HR business partner like EESI not only helps you formulate the right policy manuals for a company your size, but also the forms and procedures your managers need. It also provides the ongoing training necessary to mitigate against potential risk and liability. But an EESI business partnership can also do a whole lot more, like help you hire top talent, provide your business with the Fortune 500 benefit packages necessary to attract and retain that talent, provide insurance specific to your company needs, handle payroll, keep you compliant with the dozens of state and federal laws on the books, and provide safety training for managers and employees. Even provide working capital at low interest rates quickly when you need it. All this and a lot more. If you'd like to learn more about partnering with EESI, simply call 210-495-1171. That's 210-495-1171. Thanks for listening to today's podcast. We hope it clarifies the HR process for you, all part of our goal at EESI to simplify business.